Have you ever been in a room full of your closest family members, surrounded by the exact people who have known you your entire life, and yet felt completely unseen? We're conditioned from day one to believe that physical presence and basic provision equal love. But there's a silent epidemic running through generations, an epidemic of emotional neglect that leaves this lingering, completely invisible scar. And that brings us to a really profound paradigm-shifting question. Why do so many of us feel profoundly alone in the exact place we are supposed to feel most loved? Listen, the answer doesn't lie in something you did wrong. It just doesn't. It actually lies in a dynamic that society rarely ever talks about: transgenerational emotional immaturity. In this explainer, we're going to expose this unspoken pain and hand you the blueprint to finally break free. Act 1. The illusion. The hidden emotional epidemic. To understand why we feel this way, we first have to completely deconstruct the societal illusion surrounding family dynamics. Look, we're taught from a really young age that parents are inherently emotionally mature adults, basically just by virtue of being older, right? But age definitely does not guarantee emotional capacity. Our explainer today is grounded in the groundbreaking work of clinical psychologist Dr. Lindsay Gibson. Her book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, finally gave a name to this hidden emotional epidemic. She literally spent decades identifying a pattern where highly emotionally sensitive children are raised by parents who are fundamentally incapable of meeting them on an emotional level. Now, emotional immaturity isn't just about acting childish or throwing a tantrum. It's the absolute inability to tolerate honest emotion. These individuals retreat from true intimacy. They resist reality whenever it gets uncomfortable, and they absolutely refuse self-reflection. They're essentially operating on deep survival instincts, prioritizing their own comfort way above any genuine emotional connection with their kids. Dr. Gibson hit the nail on the head when she wrote, "Emotional neglect in childhood leads to painful emotional loneliness." Think about it. When a parent lacks emotional empathy, they literally cannot validate their child's inner world. So that child grows up with a physical caregiver in the house, sure, but an emotional ghost. And that creates this lifelong void that just echoes into every single relationship they build as an adult. The illusion of healing, the psychological straitjacket. Which brings us to the coping mechanisms we develop. When you're a child in an emotionally starved environment, you do whatever you have to do to adapt and survive. But those survival tactics, they become traps that completely stifle your true growth later in life. A really stark contrast emerges here. There is your true self, the part of you that seeks authentic growth, has genuine needs, and looks for clear solutions. But then, on the flip side, there's the role self. This is basically a psychological straitjacket. It's a mask you learn to wear to keep the peace, literally sacrificing your authentic identity just to get a tiny drop of approval from your parents. And right alongside that role self comes something Dr. Gibson calls the healing fantasy. This is the subconscious, totally desperate childhood illusion that if you just play your role perfectly, if you're just good enough, quiet enough, or maybe successful enough, your parent will suddenly change and finally give you the love you crave. It's a fantasy, and it keeps adults trapped in these exhausting, endless cycles of people-pleasing. Act 2. The framework. The psychological awakening. But eventually, the illusions collapse. Playing a role takes a massive, massive toll on your psyche, and honestly, your mind can only take so much before it forces you to face the truth. We call this the breakdown. It happens when the pain of maintaining your role self finally outweighs any perceived benefits. It usually manifests as depression, severe anxiety, chronic stress, or even insomnia. But here is the major paradigm shift. This breakdown is not a failure. It's actually your true self's alarm system finally going off, demanding that you change course and honor your reality. Now, when children face emotional immaturity, they generally split into two distinct coping styles. You've got externalizers who are reactive, they blame the outside world, and they constantly fight reality. But many of you watching this are probably internalizers. You're highly perceptive. You take on all the emotional labor in your relationships. You constantly blame yourself when things fail. Basically, you are the exhausted caretakers of the world. Dr. Gibson shares this incredible anecdote about a man named Mike. He was a classic internalizer who went through a really devastating financial collapse and a divorce. He basically lost everything he used to define his worth. But when he finally let go of his role self as the eternal provider, he said something incredibly profound. I guess you get rid of success first, and then you see who you are as a person. The total collapse of his role is what forced him to finally find his true self. The maturity awareness method, becoming the detached observer. Okay, so how do we actually achieve this freedom without having to lose everything like Mike did? We use what Dr. Gibson calls the maturity awareness method. The entire goal here is to completely shift your approach. You move from being a highly reactive, wounded participant to becoming a detached, clinical observer. Imagine putting a massive pane of thick, soundproof glass right between you and the emotionally immature person. You can see their mouth moving, you can see them gesturing wildly, but the chaotic emotional noise, it just cannot penetrate the glass. You start to observe their behavior almost like an anthropologist studying a newly discovered species, and this psychological distancing completely neutralizes their toxic emotional pull on you. So here is the highly practical three-step framework for handling these interactions. Step 1. Express yourself clearly, but absolutely without any expectation that they will validate you. Step 2. Focus entirely on the specific outcome you want from the conversation, not on trying to fix the relationship itself. And step 3. Manage the interaction actively. You steer the ship, you set the limits, and you politely exit when you need to, rather than getting sucked right back into the emotional quicksand. Act 3. The blueprint. Finding emotional maturity. Once you've neutralized the toxic drain of emotionally immature parents or relatives, you have all this newly freed energy. Now it's time to build a life filled with people who actually possess the capacity for true emotional connection. So, what exactly should you be looking for? Well, emotionally mature people are deeply rooted in reality. They don't fight facts. They're emotionally reliable, meaning they don't swing wildly from hot to cold. They deeply respect your boundaries and your separate individuality. And honestly, most importantly, they are willing to self-reflect, own up to their mistakes, and offer a genuine apology. But hey, you have to step up too. As Dr. Gibson notes, you must learn to communicate on an emotionally mature level to have the relationships you want. You have to drop that old childhood habit of hoping people will just magically read your mind and anticipate your needs. You must learn to ask for exactly what you want directly and calmly. Reclaiming your true self, the ultimate synthesis. Ultimately, this entire journey is about reclaiming your true self. It's about validating your absolute right to establish impenetrable boundaries. It's about recognizing that yes, you are allowed to mourn the childhood you didn't get, while fiercely protecting the adulthood you're building right now. And here is the hard but totally liberating truth. Stop waiting for them to change. You cannot heal them. Their emotional capacity is frozen in time. But you can free yourself from the heavy, crushing responsibility of trying to fix them. Your main job in this world is to care for yourself, protect your energy, and honor your own reality. The glass is up, the street jacket is off, and the healing fantasy is completely broken. You're no longer playing a role. So I leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you are awake to your true self, what will you do with your new emotional freedom? Think about it. And if this explainer helped you see your own reality a bit clearer, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep observing and keep growing.